Hello everyone and welcome back to Abyssin. Today we're diving into a pretty wild story. It all started back in August of 2004 when a 15-year-old girl, full of excitement and energy, decided to explore a cave. To her, this was just going to be another fun adventure. What she didn't realize though was that she was about to go through one of the most painful and terrifying experiences of her life. It was the morning of August 2nd, 2004, and the vibe was nothing but excitement. That day's destination, Island Ford Cave nestled in rural Virginia. A 15-year-old girl, her name wasn't shared in any of the records, was all smiles. She could barely hold in her excitement as she buckled her helmet, switched on the headlamp, and listened closely to the safety instructions being given before the hike began. No one had the slightest clue how much that day was about to change. Island Ford Cave was pretty popular among local adventure seekers, especially fans of spelunking, which is just a fancy word for cave exploring. It was a go-to spot for youth camps in the area, known for having routes safe enough to bring teens into the rock formations without too much risk. The group was led by an experienced guide who had done this particular route countless times. That gave everyone some peace of mind as he led the group of 8 teens toward the wide, open mouth of the cave. As the group started making their way deeper inside, the hot summer air outside quickly faded away. The temperature dropped to a cool, almost chilly level, adding to the thrill of the whole experience. For the first hour, everything went according to plan. They squeezed through narrow corridors that forced them to turn sideways just to get through, all while feeling that strange, exciting vibe of exploring a place where sunlight never reaches. This girl had been hyped for this cave trip since day one of camp, and she was being super cautious, carefully following all the warnings about loose rocks and slippery spots. Roughly 500 feet in, things got tighter and trickier. They reached a section where, long ago, the cave ceiling had partially collapsed. The result was a chaotic pile of boulders, cracks, and uneven ground, like a natural maze made of jagged rocks and makeshift steps. She was fourth in line, right behind the guide and 2 other campers. Her headlamp lit up just a few feet ahead, and every step had to be taken with care. Some rocks were solid and safe to step on, but others would shift with the slightest pressure. The guide kept pointing out the best spots to step on, calmly giving tips on which areas were most stable. Then came her turn. She stepped onto a rock that seemed solid enough, but the second she shifted her weight onto it, it moved. In just a few seconds, everything went wrong. She tried to catch her balance, arms flailing in the dark to grab something, anything, but it was too late. She slipped. And the fall wasn't a simple one. Her tumble ended with her wedged awkwardly between 2 massive rocks. But that wasn't the worst of it. The shift in weight and movement caused the already unstable rock pile around her to loosen even more. Stones of all sizes, some as small as her hand, others probably close to 20 pounds, broke free from the cave wall and came crashing down. She barely had time to cover her head before the first ones hit. When everything finally stopped moving, she was partially buried. A pile of rocks covered her torso and left arm. Her legs were stretched out and completely stuck. Her right leg, in particular, was tightly wedged between 2 massive rocks that wouldn't budge even under force. She tried to twist, pull her leg, shift her body. Nothing worked. Her leg was trapped from mid-shin to ankle in a super awkward and painful angle. The guide jumped into action. He made his way to her carefully and started removing the rocks on top of her. The other teens pitched in, helping to lift off the ones they could reach. The guide worked methodically, starting with the smaller stones on her torso. With each rock removed, she could breathe a bit easier, but her leg remained stuck, keeping the panic at full blast. He quickly realized this wasn't a simple rescue. Her leg had slipped into a narrow crack in such a way that her body didn't have the strength or angle to free itself. To make things worse, the fallen rocks had locked her into that position even more tightly. The guide tried everything. He tugged at the smaller rock, pinning her leg, but noticed it was part of a much larger formation, immovable without the proper tools. He dug around it, removed smaller stones, tried different angles, even used his own body to try to create leverage. Nothing worked. In fact, some attempts made the leg even more stuck. Meanwhile, the rest of the group stayed nearby. A few tried to comfort her, while others were frozen, unsure of what to do. The cave's temperature, which had felt refreshing earlier at around 55 degrees Fahrenheit, now felt bone-chilling. Time dragged. What must have been 15 minutes felt like hours. Realizing they were out of options, the guide made the tough call. He told the assistant counselor to head back to the cave's entrance and get help as fast as she could. And then came the waiting. Every minute crawled by like an eternity. Above ground, the assistant ran to the nearest vehicle and grabbed the emergency phone. A specialized cave rescue team was contacted immediately. Within 20 minutes, volunteers from all over were loading gear and heading toward the site. These weren't your average emergency responders. These were trained pros who specialized in underground rescues. Inside the cave, the girl was stuck in a strange space between staying conscious and nearly blacking out. Almost an hour after her fall, they heard voices echoing through the darkness. Then came the flicker of headlamps bouncing off the cave walls. The assistant returned with 4 experienced rescuers, each carrying specific tools for the job. Their team leader quickly took over, assessed her condition, and examined exactly how her leg was pinned. With 3 members coordinating carefully, pulling at just the right angle, they finally managed to free her leg. The sense of relief was immediate. Now that she was loose, they could properly check her injuries. She had bruises all over her back and torso, but the worst was a deep gash on her left shoulder blade. It was bleeding heavily. They carefully placed her on a special stretcher, strapping her in tightly so she wouldn't move as they passed through the narrowest parts of the cave. Getting her out was slow and delicate. They passed the stretcher hand to hand through tight corridors until, at last, the soft glow of the evening sun came into view. A waiting ambulance had its doors open, ready to go. At the hospital, doctors ran every possible test. One of the biggest concerns was compartment syndrome, a serious condition where pressure builds up in the muscles and can cause permanent damage. There was also a risk of internal injuries, especially to her ribs, after being hit by those heavy rocks. Fortunately, the scans showed no fractures in her leg, but she did have 2 cracked ribs. With rest and proper treatment, she made a full recovery in the days that followed. If you thought this story was intense, wait until you see the one that's popping up on your screen right now. It starts off just like this, an innocent little adventure, but it ends way, way worse. Hit that like button and subscribe if you enjoyed the video. It really helps me out. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.